And all of everyone who's registered for the webinar will receive the slides and the recording afterwards. So feel free to just sit back and listen, and then you can look at it at a later date. Also, closed captioning should be enabled for anyone who would like to use it. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll have about 15 minutes for questions. So feel free to put your questions into the Q&A box or in the chat during the webinar, and then I'll answer them at the end. And then I'll talk about this at the end as well. We do have other webinars that you can watch, and we also do one-on-one demos if you would like, more tailored help with using protocols.io. So as an agenda for today, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a background on methods sharing. I'll then introduce what protocols.io is, if anyone isn't already familiar. I'll talk about how you can publish your protocols on protocols.io, and then how you can link them to papers and also get those protocols peer reviewed. I'll then hop out of the slides and into the protocols.io platform to show you how exactly that will work. So if we go back in history a little bit and think about methods in that context, they've really only become a focus quite recently. So the methods journal, for example, Nature Methods, was actually started only in 2004. And there was actually a lot of skepticism whether scientists would want to read journals that are purely methods. So what we see on the screen here is a quote from the founding editor-in-chief of Nature Methods. And she said that even within the Nature publishing group, that methods papers were considered quite dismissively. And that oftentimes people would submit a methods paper to a good journal and be told that it was, just a methods paper. But in fact, we know now that Nature Methods was really a huge success, and it continues to be. And so it's really interesting to think about the skepticism that happened back in, the early 2000s. And especially, as we know now, is that methods papers have quite a lot of impact. So this is an update that was published just in April this year of the most cited research papers of all time. And we can see in the graph here that they're largely biological laboratory techniques. And in fact, the top three are all methods. So they're really, really important. They're used by a lot of scientists, and really, I think they're quite the backbone of the research that we do. And so we see this kind of forgetfulness around methods mirrored in the open science movement. And so historically, open science has focused strongly on, firstly, open access publications, and secondly, open and fair data and code. However, there's been less interest historically on sharing methods openly. We are seeing within the last few years there be more awareness around this, but I think it is still quite focused on sharing, for example, software and data openly. For example, just last week, actually, I was at a open science conference, and a lot of the conversations were around software and data sharing. But there were a lot less conversations around methods sharing, which we really want to encourage at protocols.io, because essentially, if you are sharing your data, people need to know the methods that you used to generate that data. And so we do see some policy recommendations around this that have been popping up, but we're really wanting to see scientists kind of proactively be doing that. And some people are. And this is sometimes what it looks like. So lots of people are, really proactive about sharing their methods. And oftentimes that can be in the form of putting the detailed methods into the supplementary information of a paper, or often people will share their kind of protocols that are developed in their lab on individual lab websites. So these are both really, really great first steps. But there are a few improvements that can be made to these processes. So if we think about supplementary information, for example, those are static PDF documents. They're not built for protocols and methods specifically. There's no kind of standardized format of what a supplementary information looks like. And if, you improve the protocol or method over time, you cannot go back and update the supplementary information because, really methods are living documents. They don't stay the same, and they evolve as new techniques become available. And with the pace of science, methods are really constantly evolving nowadays. Another thing to consider with supplementary information is that if you are sharing your methods, they can be less discoverable in this format. So supplementary information isn't text mined, so you can't be kind of searching for what's in supplementary information outside of what's in the paper. And I'll show an example of that a little bit later, how a protocol can be useful outside the context of the specific piece of research that's published in a research article, but then it can be hard to find that if you aren't finding the article as well. And then in terms of sharing on individual lab websites, that's really great, but what we do see is a problem with persistence of the links to these websites. So as people move across universities or the specific kind of IT infrastructure that the universities use to create these websites can change, the links to these websites can degrade over time. And they're often a lot harder to cite. If you do cite a protocol that's on a lab website, will people be able to follow that link? How do you cite it? What format is it in? And that's why we want to really encourage sharing methods on the appropriate repositories. And that way the methods have a DOI that people can cite and will be a persistent identifier for that piece of work. So for hundreds of years, people have been using kind of traditional research papers as a metric of success. But with the internet, we can shift the way we're publishing to be a way that is more suitable to the way science is done now. And so if you haven't heard about it yet, I'd like to introduce this concept of modular publishing. And this is where you break down a research project into smaller standalone outputs or, modules that can be published independently and more often. So this could be things like code, things like data or methods, molecular structures, and then all of these different outputs can be published in the suitable repositories that are built to accurately share them. And then they can be linked to the central story that is detailed in the publication. And we can see an example of that in this publication here. So this is a Nature Communications paper. And I'm showing the data availability statement for that paper. And so we can see that they have deposited their expression constructs into Adgene. They have deposited their protocols onto protocols.io, and they've put their molecular structure into the protein data bank. And what this means is that the person responsible for creating each of these different outputs, and oftentimes it can be, different people who's responsible for writing a protocol and a different person who, solved the molecular structure. And each of those people can then get appropriate credit for the outputs that they were responsible for generating. And this is that same paper, and we can see that in practice here. So if we look at the paper, Kelsey Ramirez, she's fourth author on the paper. And then if we look at the protocol that's linked within that paper, she is first author on the protocol because she was a primary protocol developer. And so that means she now has a first author research output in the form of this protocol. She can link that output onto her CV, and she can track the individual metrics of that protocol, which can often, in fact, differ from the metrics of the paper. And I'll show an example of that later as well. So on protocols.io, we are a methods repository. And so what it enables is that you can put your method on protocols.io. First of all, that's the first step to kind of getting credit for your work, is putting it on a place that is open and findable by other scientists. And you could stop there. Some people just publish their protocols on protocols.io because they want to make them open and share them with other people. It's very easy to do that. The protocols go through a moderation process, but we really accept protocols from all disciplines and all kind of, areas of novelty. For example, if you made a small improvement on a previously published method, we want to know what changes you made to improve that, because often it is the really small tweaks to methods that can have a really big impact on if that method works in practice or not. And so some people just publish protocols on protocols.io and stop there. And then alternatively, if down the line you want to link those methods into the research publication that is associated with that piece of work, you can as well. And that's what this would look like. So we can see this example here. They published, the detailed methods on protocols.io, but then when it came to publishing the paper, they can just say methods and protocols are available as a collection on protocols.io. And then people will be taken to the protocols there. So really, the mission of protocols.io is to make it easy for you to share your method details. And this can be before publication or even after. And so these are the two sides of the platform. So we're an open access repository, so free to publish, free to read all the published protocols on the platform. And so if you do publish, you'll join, I think it's over 23,000 now, public protocols that are on the platform. And then the other side of protocols.io is that we're a private collaboration tool. And this is where you can have a private space to develop your methods, with your team or collaborators, and share them with the people of your choosing before you choose to share them with the world. And so when you share on protocols.io, you aren't just sharing a static PDF document like would be in supplementary information, but the protocols are very adaptable and interactive, and which enables them to be built upon and reused by other people. You can then visualize and track how the community builds upon and reuses your work. And this can allow you to demonstrate your method's impact beyond, traditional citations. And again, I'll show that in more detail later as well. So there are a few different publishing options on protocols.io, which I've detailed here. And what this means is that you can be really transparent throughout the method development process. So the first option is to be published traditionally. You click the publish button. It's a short 5-step process, which you can see on the right. And then your protocol is made available within 24 to 48 hours after it goes through the moderation process. It will then have a DOI that people can cite. There's also this reserve DOI button. So some people, they choose to link their protocols in published papers before they make the protocol public on protocols.io. And then what this means is that if you reserve a DOI, you'll receive the DOI link. You can put it into your manuscript. When that manuscript is published, we detect that your protocol DOI is in the published literature, and then we make your protocols public as well. Some scientists like to be really transparent throughout the method development process, and they make preliminary versions of their protocols available to the public. Because these protocols are, still in development, they don't have a DOI, but the community can see what you're working on and engage with you. I won't talk about signing because I think that's more about private collaboration, but what it does is that it keeps your protocol private, but it locks it so it can't be edited any longer. And then what I'm going to talk about in more detail now is the peer review options. So these are the different journals that we have partnerships with. And these journals will peer review your protocols.io protocol. Not every protocol will be suitable for an entire kind of methods publication, but especially if they are new methods or a really detailed account of a well-known method, they might be appropriate for these different journals. But the submission criteria for these journals differs between each one. So you have to see if your protocol is appropriate for these journals. But if it is, your protocols.io protocol will be peer reviewed and also published as part of a journal article. And then what you get is a peer review badge on protocols.io. So another thing I want to highlight here is that we are part of Springer Nature, but as you can see in the dropdown, these are not all Springer Nature journals. So we really are publisher agnostic. You can link your protocols to a wide variety of journals, not just the Springer Nature ones. And this is what it looks like. So this is our collaboration with +One. So they have a specific journal type. It's called a lab protocol. And if you want to publish a lab protocol with protocols with +One, they require that you put your protocol onto protocols.io. And so if I'm on +One, I can click see the protocol and it will take me to protocols.io. And I'll be taken to this protocol, and I can see here with this peer-reviewed method badge that this protocol has been peer-reviewed. And so, the lab protocol journal, it's, very accepting of a lot of different article types across disciplines. And so I would encourage you to check that out. We also have another example with BMC Methods, another one of our partners. And again, you can see, so the entire method I haven't included in the screenshot here, but the detailed methods on Protocol Studio. And then there's no need to rewrite the materials and methods in your paper. You just put the DOI to this protocol and people can be taken to the platform. And so this is a really nice way as well to get credit for your methods. And one of my former colleagues, Gabriel Gask, he did a series of interviews with authors who had gone through this process of publishing a protocol and then getting it peer reviewed. And it's been, really great feedback and been a really nice process for the authors. And I'll go through a little bit of a case study specific to Jacopo and the process he took to get his protocol peer reviewed and the impacts that it had on his career. So if you are interested in hearing more about getting your Protocol.io protocols peer reviewed, we actually ran a session at Love Methods Week, which happened back in February on this very topic. So there was a panel discussion with editors from Nature Protocols, BMC Methods, and PLOS ONE. They talked about the criteria for their journals. And then we also had two authors on the panel as well who talked about their experience. So you can scan the QR code there to access the recording of that session, or you can also click the link when you receive these slides via email later. And so I'll talk a little bit more in detail about this protocol specifically. So this was a protocol developed by Jacopo Sarasoni on a method for accurately illustrating stone tools using vector art. If you would like to watch the interview with him, you can access that here on YouTube. It's about 40 minutes long. I'll be giving a very, very brief overview here. And so the reason that he developed this method was that traditionally stone tools in archaeology are illustrated by hand. And he had gone to a lot of different illustrating trainings and workshops, but it was the process was very specific to the artist who was rendering these drawings. So everyone had their own kind of different artistic flair that they put on their illustrations. And this meant that it was difficult to compare illustrations across different publications. And so he came up with a more kind of standardized method for accurately rendering these objects. And you can see one of the images here that was more kind of scientific so that they would be accurate and able to compared over time. And so this is what the process looked like for him sharing that protocol. So it's a little bit of a timeline, and we can see that he published the first version of his protocol on protocols.io at the end of 2020. So he was able to share it with the community really early. It was discoverable on protocols.io, and he was able to start kind of collecting metrics and visualizing the impact that his protocol had. Then in 2021, he worked to include that protocol in the +1 lab protocol and get that peer-reviewed as part of the journal article. And so before he did that, he made an update to the original protocol that was published back in October. And so he was able to do that with the versioning features that are available with protocols.io. And so he published version 2 of his protocol. And then in May 2021 was when the peer review journal article was published. Again, even after the journal article was published, later the protocol was updated to version 3 with including the interview that we did with Jacopo. And then again, what this enables is that as people work and discover this protocol in the future, it can be further updated by Jacopo or built upon by other scientists using the versioning and forking features on protocols.io. And so some of the things that Jacopo talked about was that the protocol was really great for his career in that the recognition that it gave him. And so as a result of going through this process, he was invited to lectures and practical sessions at various universities. And it had a lot of impact for him and his career, especially as he was finishing his PhD at the time. So if you're an early career researcher and you develop a protocol as part of your PhD, but maybe you don't have enough data collected yet to publish a entire research article, you can start by publishing your protocol and seeing the impact that that has. And so when you publish a protocol on protocols.io, each published protocol has a metrics tab. And then you can see, how many people are viewing it over time, who's bookmarking that protocol, and who's creating forks of that protocol. So if you're not already familiar with the term, it's when someone creates their own private editable copy of that protocol, signaling that they're probably reusing your work. And another thing was that publishing the protocol separately means that it's discoverable and applicable across a range of disciplines. So he said in the interview that although my PhD was specific to a time period in a region, which is standard for, archaeology studies, when he added this methodological aspect, the method that he published on protocols.io, it enabled it to go past those boundaries. So his illustration protocol isn't just applicable to a specific time period and a specific region. It's applicable more broadly to archaeology in multiple time periods and regions, which means that if he had perhaps published that protocol just in the supplementary information, maybe only researchers who were looking at that specific time period would find that method. But because he published that method as a standalone protocol and paper, it could be discoverable for a wide range of different archaeologists. This is another example of that here. So we can see a comparison of a paper versus a protocol. So this paper is on 3-spine sickleback parasite. So that's a fish parasite. And then within this paper, it links to this RNA extraction protocol on protocols.io. RNA extraction can be used in a wide variety of cell types, not just 3-spine sickleback parasite. And we can see that as well in this exchange on what was formerly Twitter. Someone was looking for an RNA extraction protocol not for a fish parasite, but for neuron cultures. And then this other researcher said, have a look at this basic triazole protocol on protocols.io. And so it means that if someone's just looking to do RNA extraction, this protocol can be applicable, but would they have found it if it was only in the supplementary information of this paper? Maybe, maybe not, but publishing it independently means that it's more discoverable. People can find it on Google. About 60% of the traffic to protocols.io comes from Google, and we are indexed from Google Scholar. So people are finding these protocols independently from, linking them to research articles. And then this is another nice example of something that can come out of sharing your work. So this is a Professor Luciano, and he is sharing his protocols on protocols.io and found that about 80% of his recent collaborations came directly from that. So as I said before, there is a lot of visibility that comes from sharing on protocols.io, which means that you can get credit and recognition for sharing there. All right, so now I will move out of the slides and move on to the protocols.io platform. I will just stop sharing for a second and then reshare when I'm on protocols.io. Okay. All right. So I am in my protocols.io workspace. So if you haven't used protocols.io before, when you create an account, you'll have a private workspace. And if you want to publish a protocol on the platform, you'll need to either draft a protocol within your workspace or import a protocol that maybe you've drafted elsewhere. So if I want to create a new protocol, I can go up here and I can click new, or I can import a protocol from a Word, PDF document, or even pictures actually. And so what I'll do now is show you an example of a protocol that I've imported. So this is a Word document of a kind of a test protocol that's been drafted, and I've already gone ahead and imported that into protocols.io. So that's shown here. This is the protocol that I've imported, and then this, I've created a new version, and that's the one that I'm going to be looking at today. So we can see it's pulled in the different sections of this protocol quite nicely. And it's in this step-by-step protocols.io format that will be really easy for other researchers to follow, and it's already in the format that's ready for publishing. If you do import a protocol into protocols.io, what I would encourage you to do is to add extra information to that protocol in the form of components. So, for example, in section 1, they're using piranha solution. I used to be a chemist. I know that that's really concentrated acid that you don't want to be getting on your hands. So, for example, I could add in a warning, could say toxic, and I can also come into the components if I go into this step and add in, let's have a look, where is it? Safety information. So, gosh, something like that. Um, Another really good practice when sharing methods is to add in little tips such as notes or troubleshooting um, on individual steps. So I can also do that on the platform. So for example, with this one, I can add in a note and maybe I would like to say that let them know that they can be stored for 2 weeks. So I'd encourage you to have a look at these components, have a play with them, because they can really add a lot of value to your protocol, making it reproducible from other people. If you want to learn more about using components, you can check out our tips and tricks webinar, which is on more advanced features of protocols.io. But once I've proofread my protocol, I've added all the additional things that I want to, I can go in and view the protocol. I can preview what it will look like on the platform. And then I can see my different publishing options here, the different peer review ones. And I can go in and I can click publish. Um, you know, really try and have a discoverable title. We also ask that you include an abstract, again, for indexing purposes and really to put the method into context. You can add in any funders or other authors. If during the protocol development process, you've added or a colleague have added different comments, you can tick to discard those kind of comments that were maybe relevant to the editing process, but you don't want published. And if the protocol is still in development or things like that, you can add in additional notes and let people know that. There are, different workspaces that are available on protocols.io. If you aren't familiar, you can watch our protocols.io introductory webinar, and you can add the protocol to the different workspaces as part of that publishing process. Preview what it looks like. I won't go ahead and publish this one, but then once you confirm, the protocol can be made public on the platform. And so this is an example of a published protocol on the platform. So in this example, it hasn't specifically gone through the peer review process with one of our partners, but it is linked to this eLife paper, which has been peer reviewed. And so I can see what paper it's linked to here. And again, I can go and demonstrate the value of the protocol that I've shared with things like this works for me button. Who's tried this protocol in their lab and found that it works for them. I can say, hey, look, I've developed this protocol. So many number of people have tried this protocol. It works for them. I'm, creating really reproducible work. I can come in and I can see the other metrics, and we can see that, this protocol is very popular, but the protocol itself is cited within papers as well. And so we can see some examples of that here, of where the protocol itself was cited. And I can also come and revisualize how people have built upon this work. So sometimes it's the authors who have created new versions and forks of the protocol, and sometimes it's other people. And I can see exactly who's done that and visit those protocols. Again, visualizing how the protocol changes over time and who it's been used by. So I think that's all I have to show here. I'll move back into the slides and finish up the presentation. Okay. So to finish up, there are a lot of benefits to you for sharing your protocols on protocols.io, and there are a lot of organizations that encourage that as well. So this is an example of, there are many journals and publishers that recommend using protocols.io during the manuscript submission process. We're also seeing some funders require or recommend using protocols.io in their grant guidelines. So one example is ASAP Parkinson's, and they actually mandate that if they are funding your work, you need to be sharing your methods on protocols.io. And we also have various universities that have campus licenses to help their researchers conduct more reproducible research. And then if you liked what I spoke about today or need additional help, we have a lot of different resources that can be accessed on our website. So you can visit our help center if you need help with anything specific. We also have short 1 to 2 minute video tutorials that you can watch, and there's some on, for example, how to import a protocol, things like that. And you can, of course, always submit feedback or ask a question when you're on the platform. Look for the little question mark button, and then you can send a message directly to our team, and we'll get back to you. We also have 3 different webinars that run across multiple different time zones, and that's 3 times a month. And you can also access the past webinars that have been done. All the recordings are posted publicly. And you can request a personal demo. So if you're in kind of Europe, Africa time zone, that would probably be with me or my colleague, Emma Ganley. So that's all I had to cover today. Thank you for listening. We will open up to Q&A. While we're doing the Q&A as well, I would like to ask if you could fill in the webinar feedback survey. We want to make sure that we're doing webinars and presentations that are what you want and are useful to you. So there's about, I think, 10 questions. Some are multiple, most of them are multiple choice. So you can scan the QR code, and then I will also copy this link and put that in the chat. But then the Q&A will be open. Okay, I've seen a question come through. How to publish my protocol as standalone with a DOI and Google citation. Yep, so you can follow the process that I detailed just before. So I'll open protocols.io back and I'll just show that again. So all right, we'll go back to here. So all you need to do is create a protocol in protocols.io after you've created an account. Once you go to that protocol, you'll see the different options along the top here. And once you click publish and go through that publishing process, then you will receive a DOI for your protocol. And so if you're not part of a kind of premium institution, then there's usually about a 24 to 48-hour delay while it goes through the moderation process. And so you will receive your DOI within 24 to 48 hours. And then it is indexed on Google Scholar and things like that. Hope that answered your question. Let me see if there's any other ones. Okay, how long does the peer review process take on average? So the peer review process, it does not occur as part of protocols.io. So we don't offer the peer review service. So it's the different journals that we have partnerships with. So these journals that will conduct that peer review process. So it will vary based on the different journals and based on the paper. So because that lies with the specific journals, I can't answer that question as I'm not sure. But I'm sure that if you do check out that that interview that I linked to earlier, the Ask the Experts, I think they might talk about that in there, but I'm not 100% sure. Thank you. Oh, someone asked for the link to the survey. I think I did put it. So if you, oh no, I didn't. Okay. I think I only put it to hosts and panelists. I will try again. There's the link. Okay, another question. If we have a protocol in a Word document, do we need to fill it in manually, or can we ask the software to generate it from the Word file? Yep, so that's exactly what the protocol import will do. So this import a protocol button here. So you can drag and drop a Word or PDF file, and then it will convert it to the kind of stepwise protocols.io format. But you don't have to do it that way. I mean, if you already have something created in Word, that will make it a lot easier, but you can just create a new blank protocol on protocols.io. I'll do that now. And you can start editing directly in the platform. So I can, create a new step and start typing in there and draft my protocol that way. I hope that answered your question. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Are all the options free? So all of the options for sharing and publishing protocols are free. So you can come, if you create an account on protocols.io, completely free to create an account. You will have a private workspace. With the free account, you can create a limit of 2 private protocols. So if you want to create more than, for example, if you wanted to create 3 protocols, you'll need to publish one of them, which would then give you an additional kind of space of private protocols. But publishing the protocols on the platform is completely free. So if you wanted to have a workspace with, 10 protocols that you share with your team and keep private, there is a paid version for that. But if you just want to be publishing, sharing your protocols and making them open, that should be easily available with the free version. We also do offer kind of university-wide subscriptions. So if you maybe you can't pay for protocols.io yourself, but you would hope that your university would take out a subscription, you can get in touch with us, let us know what your university is, and it makes it a lot easier for us to kind of advocate to the university if we know that you're interested in it. So please reach out to us if you do want that. No problem. Okay, I think there's some other questions in the Q&A. Can you still patent your protocol after making it publicly available? Perhaps a modification. So I think it would depend highly on the circumstances. What I would encourage you to do is get in contact with your technology transfer office. I think that's what it's called in a few countries. It might have a different name depending on your university or your commercialization office, and ask them that question because it does highly depend on the circumstances, and they'll be able to provide you with the best guidance based on your university policy and your specific scenario. But you should always be careful about making things publicly available if you do know that you want to patent down the line. My protocols.io profile does not contain the options publish, DOI, and others. The protocol I uploaded was a PDF file. Okay, so there's a few things there. So I think if you uploaded a PDF file directly into your workspace, so for example, I think I've got one here. Wait. So in my workspace, I have protocol files, and I can also put other file types. So this is a test protocol in PDF format. So I won't be able to publish the PDF directly. But what I can do is click on that and then convert that PDF into a protocol file. And then, so we'll look at that. So I think that's, and then publish that protocol file. So you should have all of these options available in most cases. The only reason that you wouldn't is if you joined someone else's workspace and you're not a workspace admin, but your workspace admin has disabled publishing. So, for example, if I go to my workspace, file access settings, we can see that I can allow or disallow publishing. So I have allowed publishing, and I can change that because I'm admin of this workspace. But if I was a member and my admin had turned that off, then I wouldn't be able to publish. So I think check your access settings or speak to your workspace admin, and they might have turned that off. Okay, another question. I work in a facility and we use protocols from already established methods. We are considering having these methods in protocols.io for reporting and visualization of our services. Can we copy an existing protocol and publish with our modifications? If there is not a protocol published because it is an old protocol, what can we do? Create one and cite the paper. Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we do see people do that. So if you want to, for example, take an existing protocol that someone else that is published elsewhere, and put it on protocols.io, you can do that. And so what people often do is they will put in the kind of disclaimer of the protocol at the start or in the abstract that this protocol is based on, the kind of New England Biolabs manufactured kit protocol. and then state that up front or cite the previous protocol. But it's made very explicit at the start that, this is an improvement on a previously published method. What you can also do is put someone else as the author of that protocol, but you will be a protocol owner. So let me try and find an example of that. This one should show that. So this was someone else's protocol that was imported. So we can see these are the authors of that protocol, but I am the owner. So that means that I can kind of, I own this protocol in my workspace. I can create new versions of that protocol, but I'm acknowledging that these other people were the original developers. And I can also transfer ownership as well. So if I go transfer, maybe later one of the authors creates a protocols.io account and they reach out to you. You can transfer ownership to them down the line as well. And then I think the last part of that question was about forking existing protocols. So you absolutely can. So all of the published protocols on the platform can be kind of forked by anyone with an account. And so when you click that button, what I'll do is I've got a nice example of that actually. Here we go. And so when someone creates a fork of your protocol, let's see, this one, does it have any forks? No. Mm, here we go. So we can see, so this was the original protocol. It was a Ebola virus sequencing protocol. Someone came along, forked it to create this COVID sequencing protocol. The protocols are largely the same if I go in and compare them, but we can see exactly where it came from. So, and I can go in and view that. So all the protocols on the platform are CC BY. It means that they can be reused as long as the original authors are attributed, and that's what this is here. So feel free to fork any published protocol. Okay, let's see. I'm just conscious that we are almost at time. There's a few other questions I'll try and answer quickly. Is there a demo or webinar to show me how to switch my PDF into a discoverable protocol? Yes. So if you go to protocols.io/tutorials, if you go to this, one of them will specifically be on converting them from PDF to a protocols.io protocol. And then if a method is already published in a journal and a later one wants to make the protocol a step-by-step, is it possible to link the paper method into the protocol? Yes, it is. So what you can do is go to, let's see, this one. If I go into metadata, I'll go into edit. And then description, manuscript citation. So I could create a new version of a published protocol, and then enter in the citation of the manuscript that I then published at a later date. All right. So we're at time. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I think that's all the questions. But thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a great day.